Welcome to West Virginia Beer Roads, a podcast all about beer from a West Virginia perspective. I'm Erin McCoy, here with my podcast partner, Charles Bockway.
Well, it's been a year and a half since we caught up with brewer Ross Williams at Bad Shepherd Beer Company in Charleston, West Virginia. And I just thought it was time to get back with him.
Right? So much has happened at Bad Shepherd since then. We've had the pandemic. They upped their commitment to canning. They've had some personnel changes, just a whole lot of stuff. So we have Ross Williams here with us now. Ross, welcome back to West Virginia Beer Roads.
Thank you. Did you guys say it's been a year and a half?
It's been a little over a year.
A little over a year?
Almost a year and a half,
It's a
I
year
think.
and a half. Yeah, it was January of
Oh my gosh, it has been a year and a half.
2019.
It does not seem like that long.
2020, I mean. January 2020.
It's a lot nicer to be here at your house than sitting in the grain room with the lights off, because that's what we had to do. Remember that?
Yes.
That's what we had to do to find a quiet place
Yeah.
at the brewery.
It was a little
Yeah.
challenging at the brewery.
Impossible, really, I guess, to find a quiet place at the brewery. Well, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been an eventful year since we saw you last, or a year and a half. And I guess you guys have weathered the storm okay, right?
Oh yeah, seems like business is picking up. You know, things are looking pretty decent, I think, for the future of beer in West Virginia, craft beer.
Now, did you guys close operations for a while last year, or
We
did you? So you took some time off. Talk about how that affected things.
Yeah, you know, the restaurant was closed. You know, it just seemed like absolute worst timing for everything, and I know that's like how the whole pandemic went. We had just been closed for a couple weeks to redo floors and you know, do some renovation at the brew pub there, and then you know, closed for a good while for the pandemic. I'm having a hard time remembering exactly how long.
No, that's okay. I just wondered, do you think it had a negative impact on sales? I mean, being closed. I assume
Oh,
it had
well, yeah, absolutely. You know, we still sold some beer here and there during that period. But by and large, you know, we were not doing a whole lot in the brewery. We did use up grain and fill up some tanks with lager.
You got some lagering time, probably not necessarily by your own choice, but
Not at all by our own choice, but last year and then again this year, because it, you know, it's been a over a year long effect. We were able to brew Oktoberfest in March, so
yeah,
we're
perfect.
brewing Martin.
So with us now coming out of the pandemic and you seeing sales probably returning more toward a normal type of a level, what are some of the largest selling beers you guys have at Bad Shepherd, and what are the ones you can really rely on when you put them out there, they sell through?
Of course, Loud. You know, the Loud IPA is the big seller.
Flagship.
I'm brewing it tomorrow. I brewed it last week. I brewed it the week before that.
Lots of loud.
But
Very
other IPAs are doing well also. You know, I mean, I brought the Electric Petting Zoo, which we have in cans, but it is selling like really well in kegs and on draft. And of course, our sour series, which we haven't canned any of yet.
And we're going to get into that in a little
But
bit.
our Sour Holler series, we've done a couple other sour one-offs, and those are going really well.
So that's your big sellers right now.
IPAs
Consistent.
and fruity sour beers are the thing for summertime.
Got it.
Well, let's talk about some canning. I know you guys aren't in the habit of canning everything that you brew. At least that's been your past, or my past experience with you all. Do you have any plans to have more regular canning, or any plans to upgrade your existing canning one?
Well, you know, it's a good question, and it's one that, you know, we're just gonna have to wait and see kind of what the future brings, because we were really interested in a small canning setup, something a little more automated than what we had. And then we started hearing rumors of a can shortage. And it's
Right.
like, well, do you really want to invest this money in this new machinery that may then sit idle because you can't get the cans to feed it? So we've held off on that. And so what we're doing at this point is just doing 15 or 20 cases at a time. And, you know, myself and one other person can pull that off in a little, you know, about a half a day in the brewery. So that gives us enough to keep our cooler at work full and get a few cases out here and there, but we're not real focused on it.
Right, for distribution. What about, switching gears a little bit, what about the ability to fill crowlers at the brewery? Is that something you have considered or are thinking about?
Well, we've thought about it. You know, with the Busy Bar, it's an attractive prospect. Of course, we do have glass. You know, we have our howlers and growlers, and I know that's not real trendy, but our staff is already really good at filling them.
Right.
There's a lot to be said for glass, and you know, I've gotten a crowler here and there that from different places where the seam wasn't very good. And so it adds another layer of, you know,
Training.
quality control, training, and all of that. So that's you know, not to mention, where will we keep the empties?
It's a storage space issue. Yeah, totally understand. But not off the table, maybe. You just
Oh, I mean, not off the table. We might do it one day, but I wouldn't hold your breath.
not in the near future.
I think we'll get a real canning machine before we get a crowler machine, just because I think we're going to stick with glass.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense. Talk about retailers that are carrying Bad Shepherd cans. I know you said previously you can enough to get some out and a little bit into distribution. Who regularly carries your cans?
I'm not sure there is a regular, you know, who regularly carries them, but Fruth and Drug Emporium.
I see them there, and I think that's, whenever they're out for sale, I bet you they all pick them up, or both of those, all those.
Well, yeah, they get some here and there. I'm really trying to, I just dropped some off myself the other day. I did deliveries on Friday, and I took some to the wine shop at the Capitol Street Market.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, don't quote me on that, except quote me on that. I think it's the first time they purchased cans from us.
Oh, that's good.
I might be
That's
wrong
great.
about that. They were just a draft customer because they fill growlers.
Well, that was actually the next question. As far as growler fillers, of course, you mentioned Drug Emporium and Fruth. So I guess the Capital Beverage Market's one as well that will
Yes, the wine
do
shop
growlers
there.
for you. Is there anyone that we haven't mentioned that has growler fills with your beer?
That's a good question. I know T&M Meats fills a lot of growlers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they do a lot of business out there, and you know, they have bought a lot of our beer over the years. I don't know how much of it goes into growlers and how much.
Right, but no, but they have the ability to, as far
Absolutely.
as the growler filling.
Absolutely. You know, I'm not really sure about like growler filling stations outside of those places. Of course, I know like Oscar's fills growlers and crowlers. You know.
Right, yeah. I mean, there's quite a few bars anymore in our Charleston, Huntington market that do fill growlers, have a growler license. I know there's a couple in Huntington, certainly Jeff McKay at Summit does. He carries some of your beers because I was down there recently drinking them.
Same.
Oh yes, Jeff's an old friend, and you know, certainly a friend of craft beer in West Virginia.
Oh, yes, it has been quite important regarding craft beer in West Virginia.
Oh yeah, can't say enough about that.
Ross Bad Shepherd has had some personnel changes over the past 6 months or so, and wonder if you could bring us up to date with those, especially those that affect the brewery operations.
Oh yeah, just excited to have some good help in the brewery these days. Our longtime staff members, Sean and Tyler, who a lot of customers know from being bartenders, but those guys have done so many things around Black Sheep and the brewery over the last several years. And so they're both helping in the brewery, cleaning kegs, helping me fill kegs, milling in grain, mashing out on brew day. And then Michael has been working in the restaurant as the prep cook, and he's also been helping in the brewery some, and learning a lot about the brewing process and cellar work, filling kegs, and packaging beers. So multitasking. Great to have some help like that.
Yeah, well, and what's up with Patrick Guthrie? I've seen him out here pushing kegs in bars and stuff. That's the owner of Bad Shepherd, and he's been out delivering beer. Talk about that.
Yeah, I think Patrick just wanted to work out.
That's a good workout.
Move a bunch of stainless steel around, and when it's full, it's a better workout. No, I think he's enjoying being out there and meeting our customers and really kind of, getting some FaceTime in with them, seeing what their needs are, seeing how he can best accomplish getting the beer that we make to the people who want it. And it's a challenge. He's recently added Bluefield on the route.
That's not close.
And
it's like 90 miles.
It's a hike, but there is a demand there, and he has the dedication to make sure he's going to actually make it down there and sell the beer. I mean, it's not that we weren't doing that before. Not that we didn't want to, but it's hard to, sometimes it's hard to fit it in when there's one keg or something.
Oh, sure, right.
Not exactly on the way to other
hard
places.
to justify it. So you try to make sure you can get like several accounts in one location before you want to expand there, right?
Right. I mean, I'd say that's a challenge for all our small breweries. It's how do you balance out accounts and territories that you want to service? Because once you start selling beer somewhere, they expect you to come back every week. That's right. You can't just say, well, we're not going to sell beer in this town anymore. And no.
Well, let's talk specifically about the beer that you brew, and I'm going to reference the Sour Holler series, which has been a fun seasonal for Bad Shepherd for this year and something you've been building upon. Do you have plans for a similar series that you hope to build upon going forward in addition to the Sour Holler series?
Well, so maybe not another sour series quite like that. We are doing some other sour one-offs that are similar, but like we're not anything that's a sour IPA is not in the Sour Holler series.
Okay.
Those are ghosts, and we're shooting for a 4.4 ABV on those, using JQ Dickinson salt and the fresh fruit puree. So the sour IPAs are going to be, you're going to see some different ABVs on those, some different treatment. Now I am looking forward to trying a new IPA yeast. Not replacing the yeast we use in-house for the Loud and like this electric petting zoo. But a yeast we are going to try out just because we want to try it. I think it's called Sundew. And
never heard of that one.
Yeah. Sounds pretty interesting. Makes a lot of fruit, a lot of fruity flavors.
But just IPA, nothing barrel aged or red wine barrel aged, anything as far as the series goes.
In terms of a series, well, not barrel aged. I am going to think of these like beers we're going to do with the Sundew yeast as a bit of a series. Maybe we need to put a series name on those. That's a good idea.
Well, you mentioned obviously the new hops. Talk about some other new beers that are on the horizon. And are there any plans for brewing anything that's totally new for you, beer wise, as a brewer?
like a style you've never brewed before?
Style I've never brewed before? I don't know. That's
It'd probably be hard to narrow down.
oh, it's tough.
Well,
tough to think about.
yeah.
But we are going to do an American wheat beer with that sundew yeast and some cool hops we've never used before.
Oh, that might be fun. I mean, I don't really usually get excited over American wheat beers.
Well, this
you
is
know,
this
the
is
market
it's
really.
kind of like
I
a
don't know.
this is kind of like a wheat-driven pale ale, I would say, more like
Okay,
with
we did
the brew one hops, BRU one, brew one.
Not sure what that is. School us.
I'm not sure yet either. I haven't used them yet. They're in the freezer.
Ah, okay.
We have them.
There you go. And what is it? Experimental hop or something?
They're a newer
Just a newer.
hop.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah. Anyway, so we got some new hops coming. We got some new sour IPAs coming.
Mhm.
Any other one-offs in like your other styles that you've done before though, or big stuff?
We're doing I think we're gonna do a nice Kolsch. We have good German hops. You know, we like to do some kind of German style beers like this
Yeah.
like this Czech Pilsner we have on right now.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that Czech Pilsner and speaking of all these beers, it's making me thirsty. So I think it's time to take this little break and get into some of the beers. Let's taste a couple of them. And so maybe we should start out. So you introduce that Pilsner and get that growler over here and we'll all get a try.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, what we have here is the Boho Pils, and it's a nice Czech Pilsner style beer. Obviously, it's brewed right here in Charleston, and we used Saaz hops, primarily Saaz hops.
And that's a traditional hop for the Czech beers, right?
Yes, that's right. Yes, well, yeah, Saaz hops are a bit spicy, and you know, kind of trying to keep this style. Went for about 40, 44 IBUs, somewhere around there is, and I think that's what it's at. Yeah, I found that Saaz were very spicy, a little peppery, a little tangy.
Yeah.
And I discovered that years and years ago when I was homebrewing, and I didn't know what I was doing at all. And I was just brewing like a pale ale kind of thing, but I'd been to the homebrew store, and I'd just been kind of digging through the hops, and here were these inexpensive hops called Saaz, and I didn't know what they were, and I put them in this pale ale, and just, you know, it wasn't the right thing. It was not the right way to use them. It was, you know, and it was not a great beer. My friends suffered through it like they suffered through a lot of my early homebrew, and cheers to them for that. But this is the way to use this hop, is in a lighter body. But yeah, you're absolutely right. You want to taste that malt.
And this beer, I mean, talk about the malt that's in this beer.
So we used Czech floor malted Pilsner.
Yeah, see, this is legit.
Yeah, legit. It's from Weyermann. It's Bohemian Pilsner, and my understanding is that is Czech grown Pilsner that is floor malted to this day.
Sweet.
So
It's delicious. It is a little peppery and has a bit of not a huge kick, but I guess that's
no. Also, I
for
really,
lack of a better word.
but you know, I also really love this yeast. This yeast it's White Lab's Bach yeast. And so it was more appropriate for the Maibach beer that we did before this.
Right.
And then we had this nice, expensive yeast pitch, and so we used it for this Czech style Pilsner. Not exactly the right yeast. And I was actually at White Labs last month in Asheville. And if you've never been, it's great because you can go and you can try different beers that are pretty much the same malt bill and hop bill, fermented with their different yeast strains. So
It's cool place.
they actually had a beer brewed with this, yeast and they had a beer brewed with a different yeast. And so next time might switch it up. But this was the best yeast for the Maibach.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also a good yeast for a Marzen, and I used that for our Marzen.
So basically, you're making it an all-purpose lager yeast.
Well, yeah, I mean, and then,
But that's probably true with a lot of small brewers. You buy a batch of yeast, you've got to use it for multiple beers. It economically doesn't make sense not to.
I really do try to get at least 3 pitches out of a purchase of a yeast pitch.
Mhm.
Now, often with our IPA, we're going a lot more generations than that.
Sure. Oh, yeah. I mean, once you recover the yeast, you can reuse it.
And that's a beer we're brewing all the time, so we can reuse it.
Yeah.
With these lagers, it ties up our tanks, and we don't have a lot. So, 3 lagers is about all we're going to have room for anyway.
Okay.
So.
Any more comments on the Boho Pils while it's here?
I think it's fantastic.
All right. Yeah.
3 kegs left. So.
And one, I hope you remake.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's being added to the list of beers we're, probably not going to try to keep year round because it is a lager and it does tie up that tank space, but in our annual kind of lager list.
Yeah. Well, as long as you got the time to lager it properly, and I know this one was, I tell you, it's a beer that I've seen a couple other accounts around, and it's gotten really good comments, among the lager drinkers. So,
hey, thanks a lot.
Yeah,
that's great.
When we want to see you come back, and when we come back to this, we're going to have beer number 2 here, which you brought, and we'll get to that in just a second. All right, we're back, and Ross Williams has another beer. Let's, Ross.
So Electric Petting Zoo is it's a hazy IPA. Of course, it uses our same yeast we're using for the Loud and a lot of other IPAs these days.
Is this the first time you all have canned this?
This is the first time we have canned this beer. Yes.
Okay.
And we did about 20 cases, and selling pretty well.
Nice color.
Nice color. You might want to rouse these cans. I did not upturn that can or anything. It still has a little haze, but anyway.
It's got a nice smell.
Dry hopped with Citra, Idaho 7. This is our first time using Idaho 7 too. That's a change for this beer from the first batch we brewed of it. We used different hops.
A strong aroma.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
very strong.
personally, I get a lot of grapefruit out of the Idaho 7.
Mm-hmm.
Citra, we're all familiar with.
Sure.
Getting a whole lot of different citrusy things.
Yeah.
Was that the only thing you changed? Was the Idaho 7?
Yes, Idaho 7 was an addition. Previously, I think it was mostly Citra, and then it was like cleaning out the hop freezer. So probably had Amarillo, some like Mandarin in Bavaria. I think that first batch probably got some like Mosaic as well, because you're just trying to like meet this hop bill sometimes with a new beer.
Electric Petting Zoo is not a one formula beer. It's one that you've changed and will continue to change.
Well, I brewed a single batch of it last year, and we liked the beer, we liked the name, and we wanted a label, and we also wanted to like send it off in one direction. So that's where the Idaho 7 Citra combo came in. And really a big part of that's Patrick, wanting to try out that Idaho 7. We were looking at the list of different hops that are available, and he said, "What about this Idaho 7?" And I said, "Well, yeah, sounds like a great hop. We've just never tried it." So then it's like, what do you do with this? Well, pair it with Citra, probably. A lot of these hops need a buddy.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Or else the beer gets too one-dimensional.
Yeah.
And So that's where this came from.
Now, I noticed on the can, and you introduced it as a hazy IPA, but the beer coming out of this can is not very hazy. What do you tell a customer who buys a hazy IPA from a brewer and then says, well, you know, and this isn't the only one I've seen like this. I mean, it's not from you, but I've seen them from many people.
Yeah, it's absolutely true.
And what you can maybe get into a little bit about what causes that, you think, and
Well, so
what do you do about it?
I left my flashlight in my locker at work, but I know that in this can is going to be pop stuff and other
He
stuff.
is checking out the can right
Yeah.
now with his flashlight.
With
Looking
mine.
inside.
with Aaron's borrowed flashlight off her phone. You know, it's just a thing that happens to beer when it gets exposed to gravity, you know, sometimes.
Yeah, well, I mean, how, you know, sometimes, I mean, in hazy IPAs, they're like milky almost. Then other ones are just lightly hazy.
Sure.
This one certainly has a tiny bit of haze, but not what I would call hazy. Just looks like a normal unfiltered IPA.
IPA, I know.
Yeah.
This the frustrating thing about yeast. Sometimes it doesn't always do what you want it to do, and sometimes it does something a little better than you want it to do it. So, you know, when you end up getting a beer that really just wants to ferment out, like you can't tell the yeast to stop.
You can't control yeast? Are you kidding?
I mean, you can
I thought all
try,
brewers
but
could
you can
control
try, but
yeast.
not if you want a good clean fermentation. So, you know, I'd rather let the beer finish out and do what it wants to do than try to force a batch that is like wanting to clear up to stay hazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, they sell stuff you can add that like keeps it hazy.
Well,
and I try to not use
some people
anything
try,
like
you
that.
know, all kinds of different yeasts because they find some work so much better at
Well,
remaining in suspension.
This yeast typically does that for me, but not every single time. Not every single time. And you know, we're just a small brewery with no lab
Right.
and no space for a lab.
Right.
And no, I mean, you know, maybe if I had someone really passionate about that,
Yeah.
they could come in there and help me figure out some lab related stuff. But as it is, we're just busy making beer.
I
you know?
think maybe that just reminds me, you know, like a lot of small breweries, you don't have all the controls or all the labs that do all the, you know, the kind of tests that find out things. What would be good advice for a beer consumer? Like, for instance, should this beer always be kept cold? It should never warm up and be on a hot shelf.
I don't think that's necessary with most beer if it's properly packaged.
Even IPA. That's pretty standard, at least as far as I'm concerned.
You
Keep
should-
them cold, drink them fast.
You absolutely should make every effort to keep an IPA cold the whole time, and our cans are. You know, they go straight off the canning setup into the cooler. But it's not the end of the world if some IPA gets warm for a day or two.
Yeah, no, I hear it for a day or two, but I guess once you're in a store, you're outside of your control, they're out in a bar even, are you giving them recommendations when you sell the beer? This should be kept cold.
Well,
I mean, sometimes people have it on their labels, keep this cold, you know.
I guess we're lucky that we're so small
Yeah.
that we just don't sell that many cans and have to worry about it that much. You know, but I do try to tell people that it should stay in the fridge.
Yeah.
And there are so many reasons that it should stay in the fridge. And there are very few reasons that it should not be in the fridge. And if, you know, you just need some more refrigeration space if you don't have room, find somewhere in the walk-in cooler or something.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of small breweries, you know, we have some nice labels. This has a matte overlay over the paper label, but a lot of small breweries are using a paper label that doesn't have any kind of protective coating, And if those cans have been cold or bottles and they warm up, it can start affecting the labels. So then that's not going to be good for the establishment trying to sell those anyway. So they should just keep those cold.
There's also a big issue out in the market, and certainly beer geeks love to see either born on dates or Best By dates on the beer. And what's your position on that?
Oh yeah, I love it when I see it.
But you don't do it.
We do not do it. We do not do it. If anyone ever has a question, we know based on the smack pack top thing, because we change it up between batches. So I have
like this.
No, the topper piece, the
plastic.
The plastic. Got you. Okay.
Yeah,
so we can usually tell you.
Is there? How come you don't, or you choose?
We just
Is it
don't.
just
We
too
just
much?
haven't gotten a little date coder thing. We could put it on top of the thing. The little machine that prints it on the bottom, though.
Well, that's expensive.
They're about 10,000 for your
I understand why you don't do
small
that.
handheld.
Well, and it doesn't justify cost.
But people take those things that they used to use in supermarkets, like they put prices on stuff, and they put a day up, they just whack them.
Yes. Well,
that may not make sense for you.
I should just get one of that. No, really, we should.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
It's a good idea though. And
Well,
we should probably just do
I know
it.
there are a lot of, especially beer, craft beer geeks, as Charles called us lovingly. That we do check dates, especially with IPAs, because they are, you definitely want to consume them in a certain amount of time, and so it is very common to. But at least for me, before I go buy any beer, I do look if it's there. I check the date.
If
and
it's
I've
like
certainly put
2
things back.
months, 3 months on IPA, I might consider getting the Kolsch.
Well, yeah,
That's a
well,
Kolsch. That's just a
the
Kolsch.
date codes also help a bar or a retailer know that when they need, and I hope they pay attention to this, when they should push that beer and get it off the shelf, put it on promo or something, but if they kind of lose touch with when we bought it, it's not obvious to them when they look at what's on the shelf. Maybe they let it sit there another 6 months. And I do see that in our market.
And that's not good. Not good.
More so than not, unfortunately.
Let me know if you see
We would.
Well, we won't know on yours.
Suspect cans out there.
Well, anyway.
I'll just go buy them.
All right. This is a very nice IPA in a modern style. It's got a lot of that juiciness to it. Fruit's really strong, comes through in the aromas.
Great
as well
aromas.
As in the taste.
Yes, definitely. Agreed.
And it's, well, go ahead there.
And you said earlier in the interview that it's like flying out of the keg at the bar, that you're selling a lot of this right now.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So people are enjoying it. That's
and
good.
A decent number of cans. Probably one of our faster selling cans of the last year.
That's good.
So that's always a good feeling.
Yeah, well, it's got the combination, you always look for the balance in these things so that the malt in this seems to be just about right. It's in certainly a target range. It's got a good taste and a good mouthfeel, what comes across. So it's not just a one-dimensional beer at all. It's not just a hoppy, Idaho 7 beer or something. It's got the whole package. And I'm not surprised that the market's responded very favorably to Electric Petting Zoo.
Remind me what is the ABV? 6.8.
Yeah,
Okay.
6.8 ABV. So that's right in the sort of the center of basic IPAs.
Sure.
That's
Yeah, it's a good beer.
Really convenient number for the brew system. It just that brew house loves making a 6.8, 6.97% beer. It's it's right where that filter wants to run.
Well,
perfectly.
Ross, our glasses are now empty, and I think we have a third beer that we're going to sample today.
We do.
You want to reach it? Okay, we're back here at West Virginia Beer Roads, and we have a new beer from Bad Shepherd Beer Company. And Ross, go ahead, take it away.
This is the Wolf Cuddles. It's a Baltic porter.
What is a Baltic porter?
What is a Baltic porter? Some people say it's okay to ferment a Baltic porter with an ale yeast, and some people would disagree with that statement. We did use a lager yeast for this beer.
Thank you.
Great label by Jimbo Valentine. ferocious wolf on there,
Okay.
just like you want to cuddle. You know.
Absolutely.
I don't want to cuddle that wolf, but whatever.
I like the label.
Yeah, it's pretty good
You
art.
know.
And Jimbo, who?
Valentine.
We'll talk quickly. I mean, who's Jimbo Valentine?
He's an artist from Huntington who's great friends with Patrick and Jess, of course.
Okay.
And I know him, of course, as well, and really nice guy and really interesting artist.
And he's done other
Fascinating.
labels for you, or is
He
this
has. He did the Loud. He
Okay,
did the
oh,
Loud
that's your
label.
big seller, yeah.
He's he's done label artwork for Tyler Childers. He's done some
That's
Wow.
cool.
some
Yeah.
highly
Big stuff.
stuff
Anyway.
people are familiar with.
So let's talk about this beer.
So the beer, so we canned this several months ago, and the thing I love about using a lager yeast on a dark beer is you're kind of building a beer that's going to have good shelf life, I think. And
It smells good.
It does. It smells delicious.
it's going to retain that roastiness, a lot of roasty, dark grain, chocolatey.
I get
It
it.
is
There
chocolate.
is
Totally chocolate on
this
there's
beer.
a ton. There's a whole 55-pound sack of pale chocolate malt in this-
Oh,
Oh.
that
in a
explains the
single
chocolate.
batch of this beer. So
Yeah.
so a lot of that, anytime I'm making dark beer, I want to build it with all these different darker grains like dark crystal, pale chocolate, maybe even get some special B in there, the special Belgian grain.
All which helps build that dark profile.
Oh yeah, and roasted barley. I like roasted barley because it just gives you this roast, and it's one dimensional. But if you use it with other dark grains and other complex grains, and you can't just use a bunch of dark grains and base malt. You need something in between too. So you have to figure out how to kind of build that body that's going to last with a long lager, because that
So-
lager yeast is going to be voracious. It's going to
What
attack your body.
Are you using to build that body? What types of grain?
Oh man.
Oh, is that your secret?
Whoa.
Well. I think a big part of building a complex beer is not just using one single kind of base malt. I'll say that. Okay.
Right.
There are many kinds of base malt out there, and you don't have to just use one. A lot of, and this is a luxury we have as a small brewery, right? When you build a larger brewery, you almost have to get a grain silo for your base malt, and then your base malt is the same on every single one of your beers.
Right. That's what you see at every decent size, even in West Virginia. We have
mid-size or larger,
a bunch of what we call small breweries, but they're big enough that they have grain silos.
Absolutely, and that's great. That's how you save money on malt.
Yeah.
And that's how you run a sustainable brewery. But I love being small enough that on my grain order, I can have 4 different traditional base malts.
Switch it up.
And each one's different, each one brings something different to different beers. And that's, I just try to make that effort to distinguish one brew from another, even when they're in the same style and similar ABV and everything.
Well, let's sum up this beer then. Cuddles. The
Wolf Cuddles.
Porter.
Yeah, nice lagered, porter, roasty, toasty, chocolatey.
Oh, yeah.
And because it's made with a lager yeast, that should make it a lot cleaner. You shouldn't get any of the fruity esters that you would get from an ale yeast, which is your typical porter yeast. So if somebody's looking at a normal porter and comparing this should be a little different, quite a different taste profile because of the lager.
You're absolutely right. It's, I hesitate to say thin,
No,
but clean is kind of the
very
clean is kind of the word. There is not a lot of contribution from the yeast in
Right.
the final character of this beer. And that's unlike like that Pilsner, where the yeast plays a role.
Mhm.
In this beer, the yeast takes a back seat to the malt.
Oh, well, yeah, this is definitely what
Hardly
you call a
any,
malt.
hardly
beer.
any hops to speak of in here.
Right.
But I mean, you need some hops in there, but you just aren't going to taste them on a beer like this.
Mhm.
No, and actually, I as I'm drinking this beer, and I'm not a root beer float person, and of course, it doesn't make me think of root beer at all, but it makes me think this would be really fantastic over vanilla ice cream. It's like
Oh,
with the
yeah.
same idea
Yeah,
with a
sure.
root beer float, it would be delicious because you
Mhm.
get that chocolate and that dark flavor profile. It would be very good.
Absolutely, absolutely. Send us pictures of your Wolf Cuddles floats.
Yeah.
And I assume this is a beer that you will continue to make.
Absolutely, it's popular anytime we make it. Anytime we can squeeze in another lager.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that someday we may have to slow down on that. But it's great in cans. I never thought of an 8% dark beer would sell in cans, but it remains popular.
Wait, one quick thing that I keep thinking of. So I know you guys haven't expanded, but in the banquet space that you're currently remodeling, there's 2 new tanks in there? Or were they just removed?
They're the same.
were
They're the same
moved.
tanks.
So it's not additional space. Okay. That's
No.
what I wasn't remembering correctly, and I wanted to clarify. I wasn't sure if it gave you additional tank space or if it was just moved.
Just
because
a
of the
little more room to work.
Okay.
And
not
and
actual additional capacity.
No,
regarding
but
tanks.
we did create space for future tanks to sit
Okay, so you do have a little
with
space you can
different floor
expand.
drains.
Okay.
2 new floor drains got installed
Right.
at that time.
Okay.
Kind of with the idea that that's where new tanks will go in the future.
Okay, that's
So,
good. Which I imagine,
Possibly,
yeah.
hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. Well, before we get out of here today, I want to know how Ross Williams would describe his overall brewing philosophy. How do you keep it exciting and challenging for you personally?
Brewing philosophy. Not sure I've had to put that into words, but
It's kind of a broad question.
keep trying new things. A recipe doesn't have to be a static thing until it's where you want it to be, and then you need to work on keeping it consistent. But like this electric petting zoo, there's nothing wrong with changing something when you think you're changing it for the better.
Right.
So that's the goal. Just try to keep making a better product going down the line.
While sticking with your basic concept, but tweaking along the way.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's, so I think that's what every brewer does every time they brew. You're trying to think about what was good about the last time and what you wish had gone better. So, you always want to keep it fresh, keep it moving forward, right?
Well, I know earlier you mentioned that, I'm always brewing loud, and I'm obviously one of the consumers that really enjoys that very much. And
Actually, if Aaron didn't drink loud, you might have a real decline in sales, I hear.
Yeah, that's I've pretty much marked the kegs. So this one's for Aaron.
All right. In all seriousness,
Not quite, but it's not like I try to change our flagship IPA.
No, of course
But
not.
sometimes you have something that you want to change a little bit, and we did change our yeast about a year and a half ago, and we like the new yeast.
Mhm.
We're into it.
What I was actually getting kind of more at is, as far as beer goes, do you feel like that sort of limits you, because obviously everyone wants the loud, and that's got to be a huge seller, big account for you? Does that sort of limit you because you're having to produce tons of loud, so you can't really vary or do maybe something like a bit different that you might be wanting to do or have in your calendar you'd like to try, and it just doesn't happen because here comes the loud.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, here comes the loud. Something I do want to get back to, and we will do it, is a Saison series.
Hey,
And,
we asked about series earlier.
Right?
That'd be great.
But that's just, that's something we were looking at our different brews for this year, and just, didn't want to start in on a Saison series because, like I said, you're buying nice yeast, you want to do 3 or 4 different batches, and that just was not going to fit in. So yeah, once in a while there's something I do really want to do, but we will do it. So it's not like holding back. Maybe it is delaying a little bit. Maybe you're right, but at the same time, I do like brewing loud because I can go into the brewery and it's not like autopilot, but it's like
similar, I'm sure.
It's like approaching an old friend. It's like you get to do this thing you've done many times before, and that's the kind of like meditative aspect of brewing that is so wonderful.
Getting in your zone, so to speak.
Is doing the thing you've done many times before and being consistent with it, or trying to.
Well, I think this is a wrap. Ross, thank you so much for joining us again a year and a half later, as we said earlier in the program, on West Virginia Beer Roads. It's been wonderful hearing about all the information and all of your thoughts regarding beer and everything else.
We'll do it again. 18 months. I'm putting it in my calendar. No, hopefully not that long.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, folks, if you haven't been down to Bad Shepherd Beer Company recently in Charleston, you got to get down there and try Ross's beer. It continues to get better and better. You hear him, he's tweaking these recipes, and typically they are coming out very, very strong. Also look for his beers at retailers and other bars in the Charleston-Huntington market especially, and I know anywhere from Morgantown to Bluefield, I guess. You might find a few of his beers out here in the market. So definitely take a look and look for those beers. We'd love to hear what you think about Bad Shepherd too, and Ross's beers. And so if you have time, make a comment on brewingstream.com or maybe on our YouTube channel. Definitely let us know what you think.
This brings us to the close of another podcast. Remember, you can subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast host. Thank you for listening to West Virginia Beer Roads.
West Virginia Beer Roads is a production of BrilliantStream.com.